Hello, everybody. I'm Coach Brandon from I Trained You, and we're here. This is week 2 of our podcast and how we navigate this space and this journey, this amazing journey called basketball. So many of us who have loved the sport from different levels. You can either love it as a player that played college, which I played. I played for the University of Miami. You could love it from a high school perspective. You could love it from a junior high school. You could even love it from rec, but the game has been so fascinating that it's created so many business opportunities past just playing. And so for myself and some of my team, we have realized that there's space and there's room for all of us to be successful because we're all out here trying to make an impact in these young kids' lives. Because it doesn't matter if we were an NBA player, if we were a WNBA player, if we were a college player, whatever we were, we're still trying to enjoy and hold on to the memories. And so with this journey called basketball, we notice that every year there's all these new kids coming out and who's going to make it, who's not going to make it. Well, this show is not about trying to bash kids or players or NBA players. We look for the positive. And we have trainers that are on here as well because it's not just about I trained you. This is everybody's community. And so when we approach it from everybody's community, we have to recognize that there's lots of different ideas. And so you may like one trainer over another or one system over another. And we get a chance to explore what that's like. So today's show is going to be a little bit about like, what is that journey like? How do you, as a player, try to get to the next level from a parent's perspective? And so we have a wonderful guest on the show. And this guest actually was one of my first students, like 400 years ago. And he, when you see him on here, you're going to say, man, he looks great for 420. So he's a great young man himself. His kid is awesome. And, I can't wait to really talk to him about what he is going through as his son is junior this year. And so as we get to know what he's talking about, what he's going through, what his son is going through, it may help us to make better decisions and better choices. So the deal is this is for everybody, right? So you might have kids that might be competing for the same position at the same school or the same AAU team. But at the end of the day, we spirit that competition to take us all to the next level. It makes not only ourselves better, but it makes the game better. And that goes into the creed. Our creed here is become a subject matter expert. After you become a subject matter expert, be the best version of yourself. And then finally, surround yourself with people who inspire you. That's what the greatest of us do. And that's what we want all of you guys to do, is not only just parents, but also players out here and coaches alike. So to that end, let me welcome Nysear Byrd. What's up, buddy?
How you doing? How you doing tonight?
So Coach Nysear is become like a nephew to me, and I'm watching him shoot at the top of his jump now. I'm wondering where he learned how to do that. Like, he didn't do that. I'm a sneak Brad on Brad. Brad, he didn't do that before he met me. It was a foot, and I saw him the other day, and next thing I know, he's jumping and he's releasing it. It's got rotation on it. Like, is he really over 25? Like, is he trying to work on it? That's awesome. And welcome, Brad Pinchback. Brad has been a notable trainer here in the DC metropolitan area, and he's becoming a great friend of mine. And it's great to have you on the show. And I love the idea. Before we bring Stan on, I really want to talk about this whole concept because when I was really, one of the first in the area doing this, now there's a trainer on every corner, right? And we talk about that, and everybody who has a perspective thinks that they deserve to offer that perspective to kids, without, you know, really being credible in some cases, right? And so it's not about the old heads who's been doing this for 30 years. I mean, you and I have definitely been in this game a long time, but it's really about how we impact these kids and how, even though you might be a trainer on, wherever, and I might be a trainer wherever, we really can come together because we're not competing for the same kids, right? Our goal is competing to make this game better than any other sport. That's the way I look at it. And I think you look at it that way too. Is that right, Brad?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, and so to that end, I mean, Nysear, obviously you work with I Trained You, you're a coach, you're a trainer. Like, what are some of the things that has drawn you to training? I mean, you've been around the game obviously all your life and you've loved the game, but what's brought you to it? Just
I mean, I've always been a person that wanted to make well, since I've been working with kids, wanted to make a really positive impact on kids. So being able to make a deeper connection with kids and people that's interested in getting to the next level. That's first. Um, and honestly, just the love of the game and wanting to help kids reach them goals that they want to get to.
I mean, so what drew you? Because obviously you've been around a lot of training from other trainers, other coaches and stuff. What drew you to be kind of connected with I Trained You?
The philosophy, honestly. I haven't seen or heard anything like it. I'll still get surprised, but by some of the stuff that we talk about and that we do, and are implementing. So I would say what really drew me to I Train You was the philosophy behind it.
You know, as a trainer that's out here competing, I look at all these, Brad, all these NBA trainers who are out here, all these Instagram trainers, and all the rest of that stuff. And you say philosophy, and really what I've come to notice is that in order to really be competitive, you have to have an understanding of how social media works
Oh,
because
absolutely.
so many of the things that are going on is built around hype. I'm not saying that none of it is quality, but if you got a good camera and you're taking videos of the number one player in the sophomore class or number one player in the junior class, and you put that out there, then all of a sudden all these kids want to go to that particular trainer. And it really might not be as it seems. And then those parents get caught in this trainer's trap where they make this emotional purchase or they're tied in with a trainer. And then it's almost like, there might be something better out there for you or a better philosophy, like you're saying, Nasir, but parents are stuck in this one thing and they think that's all they can do. Have you found that to be true, Brad?
Definitely. Yeah, you definitely see the guys. You can tell by their followings on social media, who's really kind of cornered the marketing game, so to speak, um, by their following on social media accounts. Some of these guys have, a million followers.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, a lot of it is you'll see them working with high level players, uh, all the time. Um, whether those players are their actual clients or whether they only worked with them that one time that got it on film, um, you know, we don't know.
Yeah.
But they've obviously, become very skilled at marketing what they do online.
One of the things that we talk about, Nasir, like we have a new student that's in the program, and we're not going to name him, but he's one of the best players in the city. And so he's just coming in. And what's interesting is with him just coming into this program, he's already good. So I'm inheriting a really good player. Like, so a lot of the skill sets, a lot of the moves, and we're going to benefit Brad Nasir because
Hmm.
this kid is good, and it's going to be like, oh well, he's with Brandon now, and ironically enough, one of the I'm not going to name the college, one of the top colleges in the country. When they were talking to me, like the first thing they said was, "Is he in your program?" Because before they recruit him, they want to know, like you said, Nasir, philosophy. They want to know what kind of things is he learning, what kind of things is he exposed to? Because the AAU circuit is so much about winning, and coaching is not really about training and development. Coaching is about winning as well. Whether AAU in and of itself is about winning, but coaching, if you're a high school coach, like I played for one of the best coaches ever to coach the game, but the reason why he's considered one of the best is because he won, right? And so he attracted all of these kids from everywhere to come play for him. Kevin Durant played for him. I played for him. Dennis Scott. You got all of these great players. I'm not saying I'm a great player, but all of these great players that were playing, and he inherited this. And so a lot of times I think it's hard for parents to really understand that the fundamentals, the ABCs, might have come from somewhere else, right? And so, Nysear, how do you deal with that when you're coaching a kid and you kind of know that this kid is good because he came from somewhere else? How do you make your mark on him, or do you even try to make your mark? Or as a coach, do you just play? Like, what is it that you're thinking when you have a kid that's coming in that's just nasty?
I mean, the first thing I'm thinking is he got game. Secondly is I wouldn't think that I couldn't make an impact because this kid has learned from somewhere else.
Right.
But I know that when it comes to leaning in toward me or leaning in toward them, because of the trust they already built with another person, it may be difficult to make that connection.
But is that another person, Brad? Is it another person, or are most of these kids learning from trial and error?
Both. Today's a little different, Brandon. So many kids work with trainers, and they also work with a lot of these kids also tend to work with several different trainers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of these schools have trainers that they kind of work with, either as a part of their coaching staff, like Nysear will be able to speak to this, as a part of their coaching staff, or as maybe someone on the outside that they refer their players to. Like so much of what I do is word of mouth referral.
Yeah.
And I definitely have coaches that have referred players to me. Coaches throughout the area, that type of thing. There's certain players. I mean, if I had to carve a niche for myself, if I had to say what it was, it's your high academic player. I mean, I believe at this point there are 6 players that played at Princeton that I had worked with at one time or another. That's crazy. When you think about it, but when you're getting referrals and recommendations from parents, players, that type of thing, I kind of chose to build it that way, as opposed to maybe more aggressive marketing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well,
So
if you're going to try to build, I think you have to do both. And
yeah.
I think, one of the best things that I could say is really relationship building is important. Like, I could care less. I care who the kid becomes.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you become, like I told my kids today, I said, listen, like all of these things that I'm teaching you about leadership. So we have this thing called Leadership 24, Brad,
Mm-hmm.
where there's 24 attributes of leadership that you learn, and then there's a blanket of personal skill sets that have to go along with that. And so we have this quadrant that gives you, like, you know when you have the ball, these are the skills that you have to be able to show subject matter expertise in. When you don't have the ball, this is what you have to show subject matter. When you're on defense and you're on the ball, or you're on the ball defensively, these are the skills that you have to be able to show. When you're off the ball, so I'm giving you exactly what you need to be successful. And if you can show that on every single possession, then we can start working on higher order fundamentals. And I guess what I'm saying is that these Instagram videos and some of these trainers that are out here, that's one of the things that I'm seeing that has been left out is giving the kids the exact tools that they're going to need that can be tested. So, Nysear, we're going to bring on a great guy right now. Um, he doesn't know it, but he thinks that I'm still his trainer, but he doesn't know he's teaching me now. He's teaching me. His son is older than me, older than my kid, and he's actually showing me how to be a better father, to be a patient father, and stuff like that. So, welcome to the stage, Stan. What's up, buddy? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you,
Yes.
man. We can hear you.
How's everyone doing?
You're looking like you're in shape, man. Can we go ahead and, get you back on the court? What's going on?
I'm trying, man. My knees don't want to cooperate, though.
That's why you take those injections, brother. You gotta learn about those injections. They get you back out there living the dream. So, what everybody needs to know is that Stan is one of my first students, and he's got a fantastic son. His name is Jordan. And as a parent, I wanted Stan to come on here and really share with us, because a lot of parents don't really understand what is it about this whole process, like the level that I played at, playing at Miami, all the people that I met, all the things that I went through in the process, that's complicated. And that journey, you have no idea where it's going to take you. And so I started off at St. John's High School. I transferred to the #1 team in the country, and that really helped me. And so there was no idea that I was going to start and play every minute, but I just wanted to be around a better situation for me. And so, as Stan has played on a couple of AAU teams with his son, our son has played on it. So I really wanted Stan to come on and just talk about, your journey, Stan, with Jordan. And it's been an amazing journey, right? Because it's filled with memories and excitement and hope and all the rest of it. And we're still at the very beginning of it, right? And that's what I love about this, is that, it ain't over till it's over. So can you tell us a little bit about, you and kind of how Jordan got involved with basketball and all of this good stuff?
Oh man, where do I start? First of all, the journey will give you gray hair. All right. Yeah, and this is my first journey, meaning he's my oldest, so I had to kind of learn how to navigate these waters without any help for the most part.
Oh,
But like Brandon said, I was your third student in your program. All right, so we're going back to 1993.
yeah, yeah. I told you
So
you're 100 plus years old.
yeah, it's been a long time. So I'm originally from Illinois, Joliet, Illinois. Decided to attend Howard. Um, Wanted to try to walk on. I was working at Bethesda Sport and Health Club. Saw Brandon training a couple kids in there. Um, Went up to him, asked him if I could join his program, and of course he took me in. Um, and I'll be honest, at that age, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought we worked hard. He worked magic with the assistant coaches at Howard. We were training with the coaches. The new year, this was going into my sophomore year. Um, the season, the year starts, and then we get word that Coach Byrd was leaving, and they brought in Coach McLeese, who was coaching at Dunbar, right?
Yep.
And he gave us a 30-minute tryout, and a week later put a sign up, we're not taking any walk-ons this year. So I was a little bitter. I boycotted Howard Athletics for about 15 years.
What you were supposed to.
Yeah. But I learned a lot. And right after that experience, I started working with Brandon as one of his trainers. And I don't know, I just always loved working with kids. So we had a really good program at that time. You mind if I share the name?
Go ahead, man.
It was called Triple Threat.
Yes.
Okay. It was a program. Academics, athletics, and attitude. All right. You remember that?
Do I? I
So
live it every day. Yes, I
yeah,
remember that.
so it was a really good program. We trained the kids in basketball. We provided tutoring, leadership skills, all the above. Um, and fast forward, I got into my career, ended up having my son. Um, he, even though I coached basketball at the time, I never wanted to be the dad that pushed him on the basketball. And when he expressed interest to play, I said, let's do it. Got him at a rec center, went to the first practice. There's about, I don't know, 15, 25, 6 year olds out there, and the coach didn't even have a whistle. So I asked, can I help? And I ended up taking over the program over at Stoddard and running with another good coach. And, we've been pretty much over there ever since. With my son's journey in particular, it's been difficult because I think as a parent, especially if you played, you feel like you want to give the playbook to your child and you want to give them the blueprint and say, hey, just follow this blueprint and you'll have success. And sometimes kids like to ball up that blueprint and say, I can figure it
Yeah.
out on my own. So that's really been the battle in terms of not being dad. I mean, because kids are always going to look at dad as you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, I had to get Brandon involved, which was, when we first started the journey with Brandon, I just don't think he was quite ready for what Brandon was offering. So we did have to back off. And then when he showed the interest to really go all in, I brought him back to Brandon, and I think it's been a pretty good marriage ever since. Um, but it's difficult because I think we always expect more from our kid, and we're always going to be our kid's worst critic. And because of that, you're probably going to be harder on your kid than a normal outsider would be, because you see things all the time. I'm at every game, I'm at every practice. I don't get too involved with being that type of dad that's the super yeller on the court and
Yeah.
all in front of the coach's face. I do all my dirty work in the background in terms of letting them know how he played, and I always try to be honest with him and just say, hey, look, I'm going to be your worst critic, and I'm never going to lie to you. So if you look like trash, I'm gonna let you know. If you look great, I'm gonna let you know. Um, but it's a love hate relationship when you want your kid to succeed, and trying to find that balance between pushing them too hard versus letting them find their own way. And I talk to Brandon every day about this. Sometimes I want to throw my hands up and say I quit. Other times I'm like, all right, I saw some promise, let's do it. And it's an emotional roller coaster. All right. um, but to kind of going back to some points that Brandon brought, which I thought were very good. We have this conversation often. There's definitely a difference between coaching and training. And I think as a parent, you initially want to uh, drop your kid off with a coach because you think a coach is successful, that means he's going to make your kid a success, and they do not have anything in common at all. you know Coaches, and I've learned this the hard way. I was my son's coach up until maybe his 7th, 8th grade year, and that's when I allowed him to play AAU. I told Brandon before, I'm not a fan of AAU. I think it has ruined the game, but it's become a necessary evil. So if you want your kid to have an opportunity for exposure, you have to let them play. There are not a lot of organic games that happen anymore. Kids don't play in the neighborhood anymore. Everything is organized. So you almost have to be a part of the system just to get your kid in front of some better talent. And like I said, get an opportunity to get some exposure. From that perspective, now we have to look at the money involved with AAU. Being on these teams don't guarantee your child's going to play. You're going to pay for the travel, the hotels, and and that just adds layer upon layer of the frustration, especially if your kid isn't looked as being one of the top players. We've learned the hard way of coaches having favorites, and it's just a lot of politics involved. And sometimes it can be a little disheartening and discouraging, trying to get your kid onto the right team where he'll get a chance to develop. And that's where I find the biggest issue with AAU. I just, in general, I don't think it is set up for child development. It's really set up for child showcase. And you really have to get with a good trainer to get your kids those skill sets. But even then, that does not, training and application are different. So a kid can have a ton of skill sets, but not know how to properly apply them in a game situation because they may not be getting the reps they need. So now you're navigating on, can I get him on a team where he's going to get enough minutes where he can get the opportunity to try some of these skill sets. And like I said, I tell anyone who's who's going to start this journey, you have to be ready for it because it's not easy. It's not easy. Not at all. Go ahead, Brandon. I know I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, man, we're just listening. I don't want to say that it's with a sympathetic ear. The hardest part is to kind of figure out who you are as a player, right? And where you would top out at. And we don't want to say that we have a ceiling. None of us do. I don't want to say that I have a ceiling impacting lives. Nysear, I don't want you think that you have a ceiling as being a math teacher. Brad, as a trainer, you don't want to have a ceiling, Stan. You don't want to have a ceiling on your job, So there's a lot to this in terms of how we inspire our kids and we say, hey, you can be anything. But the reality is that I went into Costco today and there was a guy that works at Costco as the teller, and he's 7'2", right? How do you do anything with that when it comes to basketball? So I don't care how good your son or your daughter might be. There's some things you just can't control. And all you can do is try to help your kid be the best they possibly can be. And that's it, and use this as a life tool, this basketball thing. I agreed with everything you said. Like every time you travel, if your son doesn't play a good game, and you're in an AAU tournament and you spent $1,000 going to this tournament or he doesn't play as much as you might want him to, like there's got to be a lot of stress, anxiety, and frustration because you're investing not just money, but your time. Then you second guess yourself. Am I really doing the right thing for my kid? And then it always comes back to, and Stan, you and I talk about this, and Nysear, you and I talk about this all the time. Brett, you and I are probably going to talk about it a lot. But, when it comes to this thing, like, we're focused on academics. Academics are first, right? And I agree with that. But there's a lot of development for academics that happen with becoming a leader. Like not just putting the pen to the paper, because when you go, you can get straight A's, but if you don't know how to work with others when you get out of college, then you might not be fit to work in a team job kind of situation. There's so much that happens in this basketball stuff. And then, Stan, what I'm looking for out of Jordan and all the rest of this stuff is for him to become a dynamic human being. And if he becomes a dynamic human being, then on the court, being dynamic is an of course, right? And that's the hardest thing to bring out in these kids because these very coaches are holding back players because they're trying to win games. And so they turn a kid that could be dynamic into a role player. I mean, Nysear, in the game that we coached, I'm going to call out James. When James was in that corner, what was that?
You said what?
What was I screaming when James was caught the ball and he was in the corner?
Shoot it.
Shoot it. Shoot it. Do not pass. And that's the thing when kids think pass first, and I get it if you're a point guard, Stan, that you want to make, the right pass. But when and this is why I tell all my point guards, like you make that first pass, and if it comes back to you, you have every right to score that basketball like anybody else on the floor. Absolutely. If you see your opportunity. And I tell people that the play is you. You are the play. So whatever we've designed and all the rest, it comes down to you. And to me, that's development. versus, Brad, what we see so much of is coaches giving these esoteric comments. Oh man, he just needs to get a little stronger. If he just needs a little bit more time. All the rest of that stuff, yes, I believe that our kids need more time. But what quality of time, Stan, are we giving those kids? How can we measure it so that you as a parent know that your kid is being educated as opposed to just getting a workout in and having a great sweat? Brad, you know that. That's what we're competing against is these kids that go to these trainers and they're getting a good sweat in afterwards and they got a great workout in, but did they get a great education? Stan, can you elaborate on that? Like what do you think? Because you've been to other trainers before, and we're not bashing any of them at all,
Yeah.
just because they're not on the show. But to me, I hear from these kids, man, it's a workout, it's an activity, it's not really something that I can layer into. Go ahead.
Like this, finding the right trainer has probably been the most difficult part of this journey. And it's like, eh, and I don't want to sound arrogant, but it's like if you're a doctor and you're trying to find a doctor for your kid, you're going to kind of nitpick how this doctor, interacts with your child and how he performs. So I find myself in every training session like, man, I wish he would just get a little bit more detailed on what we're doing here. Right now, it just looks like we're doing cone drills. I mean, can we get a little more focused on the detail of the drill? Why are we
Right.
doing it this way versus that way? Can we get a little lower on our dribble? Can we, you know what I mean? And I sit back and I'm like, all right, we got to find another trainer because I don't want to just pay somebody to give my kid a workout. I can go put them on the Peloton and sweat. You know,
Excellent.
the details is always for me, and that has been very very difficult to find in this area. And then going back to the social media platforms, once again, I watch these videos and we see these guys doing these drills, and I'm sure we've all looked at them like, first of all, they're going half speed. no one, you know what I mean? They know the film is on them, and I'm like, don't get. I don't know if these guys are putting these videos out just to get more likes so they can make money on the social media platform, or are they really trying to get clients? Um, but it's a mess. I mean, because everybody's a trainer and everyone, is putting their content out there. And I'll just say it. I think a lot of it is trash.
So I mean that's cool that you say that, but Brad, I was talking to um, another trainer earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he was really saying to me, I thought was fantastic. These kids and these parents are going off of hype. And if they see a video with our Instagram short or whatever with a player that's got a name, they want to go to that exact guy.
Yep.
Period. It doesn't matter. They don't know the history of that relationship. All they know is that kid, just like we were talking about earlier, Stan, before I brought you on, it's like, yeah, we have a kid coming in. We inherited him, right? But at the end of the day, if I put out videos with him, everybody's going to think I taught him all of these things.
Yeah.
And that's not really the case, that I didn't teach him. Now, what I find interesting is that he's going to become significantly better once he gets this curriculum because he's super smart. And he's going to apply and he's going to become a smarter basketball player. But these parents really don't know how to find a trainer, because a trainer is more than a coach. Because you're going to this tree, you don't go to your coach to learn how to play basketball. You go to your coach because you're playing on his team. You go to a trainer because you want to learn how to play basketball. And that to me is way more powerful. Hold on. We got you, Brad.
Oh no.
You, so
Hey,
so
no, that was just something else.
no, you're good, man. You're good. This is part of human nature, man. So I just want us to know that like how do you choose a trainer? How do you do your due diligence on a trainer. I know that could be a show in and of itself, but Nysear, you're young. What do you think these parents need to be looking for, and how should they analyze who's a trainer? Who would be a good trainer for their kid? Because this is going to circle back around to you. I mean, I know you're committed to Train You, Stan, but I really want to know, like when you did decide to pull the trigger, like what were all the components in there that made you do it? Go ahead, Nysear.
I was gonna say, one, they gotta weed past all the facades, like we talked about. The person that might have worked out with somebody that got a verified check on social media one time, but they don't have a real relationship with that person. They might have just worked out at the gym one time. So they gotta get past the facade first and really look for trainers that's interested in teaching their child basketball and the philosophy and the reason why they're doing things, besides just, oh, do this drill and do it over and over again. Put your right foot first and then kick your left foot, rather than saying, oh, replacement step and stuff like that. Um, Being able to make a connection with the family and with the kid, because that's important. Yeah, and I would say somebody that prefers skills over drills.
Nice. Brett, what do you think? Like, because you have a thriving business, how do you want parents and players to do research to find you?
Ooh, that is a great question. And yeah, a lot of that is social media. But I will tell you this, Brandon. A lot of the stuff that is on the internet about me, I didn't produce. Like, I didn't put on there. So it just may be on there because, me working with a certain player, and say that player happened to blow up. Okay. Part of what I do, honestly, it's very basic. It's very basic. What I've seen, okay, we want the clickbait type stuff, the, 17 dribble combination, let's be real. And Brandon, we've already talked about this. Like, only the best player gets to play that way.
Yeah.
All right. And in the better programs, he doesn't even get to play that way. There are limits on him or her as well. So yeah, I like the basics. I like the repetition. I would feel like this. If you're not, honestly, if it's an individual workout and you're not making 200 plus shots, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are we really doing? And a good percentage of those shots should be off of game movement, like cuts, 1, 2, 3 dribble combinations, things like that. Should be off of basketball movements. And also I'm seeing, that, well, number one, obviously, I guess these guys aren't going to put that on there, but, defense is a part of basketball. So, I think our trainers have to focus on that as well, especially at the younger age groups. Now, before I get so far off, I wanted to piggyback on what Stan said about AAU. I've told some of my younger players, look, if it's before 15U and you're not, say, playing on what I would call a circuit team, and I think we talked about this too, Brian.
Yeah.
Takeover, Premier, Under Armour circuit, like that. you'd probably be better served just working on your game and figuring out where's a place I can go that will challenge me as I incorporate what I'm learning in my skill and development into my actual game.
No, this is for everybody.
That's right. Oh, good.
Why is it that you would need to travel? Like I'm cool with the AAU, but why do you need to travel and play on a circuit like the junior EYBL? Like why do you
Why?
need to October to June feel like every weekend you're going to be going out of the state to be able to get these tournaments? I mean, Stan, like you know a lot about this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is that are we so pressed to get our kids noticed and to get on these teams because we're afraid that if we get on this if we don't get on this team when he's sixth grade, seventh grade, that he's not going to ever make it back? Like, you said take over earlier. Is that necessary?
No,
I mean,
those kids don't. Once you get into your teens, the 15, 16, 17, just because you play takeover in sixth grade means nothing.
Yes, nothing.
At that
Absolutely
point,
nothing.
they're just taking the best of the best. Period. So
so you really don't need to. If you have a good kid, you need to find some good local run on a
Yep.
team that's looking for some local challenges, so you don't get stressed out and you could get quality reps in for your kid.
yeah, I will say this. The craziest thing is always when we're traveling on these tournaments is that we get to wherever our final destination is and end up playing a DMV team. It's like, why did I have to go all the way to New York, New Jersey, North Carolina to play a DC team, a Maryland team? It's so much talent in this area. You don't have to travel, but we have to do it because of the money involved with the circuit teams and whatnot. Coaches are getting paid. Let's call it is what it is. um so and for whatever reason, we feel like we have to get our kids in these circuits as well so they can be a part of the hype. But I mean, I, I'll say it again. I hate this. This is the part of the game that I really hate. I think AAU has destroyed it because you know as well as I do, kids have to learn how to play two different games now. There's a style playing for your high school, and there's a style that's typically different playing for your AAU. Period. So their kids, my son goes to Murray, so we get to play Sitwell twice a year. Their kids that ride the bench on Sitwell. And they play for AAU team though, and I'm assuming that's probably where they got exposure, and they still get offers. So it does offer another level of exposure that you don't get just for playing for your high school. But like I said, it's the game that you have to play and trying to navigate those waters is just very frustrating, to say the least.
you
Um,
know and this is going to be a challenge for all of these parents that are out here, because you really can't take a stand against this as an institution. You got to just deal with it. And and if you do take a stand, there's a fear of hurting your kid in the long run
yeah,
because you didn't conform.
yeah,
I think that it's a challenge because 99.999% of these kids are not going to play college and go pro. It's just not going to happen. So the reality is that we miss so many of life's lessons because we're playing desperate, get my kid in front of this coach.
yeah,
And if the coach already has their team picked, then your kid walks out of there depressed because they got cut and they were rejected. And that's really not the case. It's just bad timing. And it's bad planning. So, so Stan, taking it to you, like you said a lot about detail. All right. Now you wouldn't be parting with your hard-earned money and all the rest of that stuff as a parent in the Trains You program, based on what you said, what was it that caused you to say, okay, my son is ready to learn, right? Because you've been to other trainers and all the rest of stuff. What made you circle back to this experience? Like, and then how has it been for you? Because I know you've had a lot of ups and downs. I mean, we've talked about that, but what has it been like?
Oh man, I think overall it's been a good experience, and I think the way you really rate that is by the child. I mean, their feedback, and with all the trainers that we've been to, I can honestly say that Jordan has taken to your training style. One thing about your particular program that that's always stood out is that you refer to your program's curriculum, you know, and understanding basketball, is so much more than just drills. There is a building process, and I felt that the way you design your program spoke to that building process. um, and I love the fact I could talk to you too, so if there's anything that I had any issue with or things that I feel we could tweak, you're an open ear versus another trainer saying, hey man, this is how I run my program. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you can take the criticism and you can give back positive feedback, and we can have a dialogue. So that's really what sold me. um, and then just getting back to Jordan, he really likes you, and he likes what he's learning. Now, that being said, I still feel like we have coach, we have trainer, and a lot of time coaches and trainers don't talk. Sometimes they're enemies.
Yeah.
Before. Um, I think one thing that we probably have to find a better way at addressing is each kid comes in, you know, um, at a different stage. You may have a kid that's already good enough to play for a takeover. You may have a kid who's riding the bench for a takeover. You may have a kid who's trying to get good enough just to make a team. I feel like each one of those kids has to be addressed differently. And I don't know if an average trainer does that versus, hey, this is my program, you just jump in and let's go, versus really catering to the needs of that particular child. I think we all know that if you watch any game, whether it's a high school game, like for school or AAU, there's a particular kid that typically always stands out, and it's usually the kid that's the most aggressive.
Yeah.
Doesn't even have to come down to skill sets, but the most aggressive kid usually catches your eye first. Okay, so if you're trying to get a kid exposure and get noticed, can we teach a kid to be aggressive? You know,
So
um,
that goes nature versus nurture.
exactly. So now we have this challenge of, can we pinpoint the three things that will make a kid, get that exposure they need to have that opportunity. And some things, can be taught. Some things may just be innate in the kid, but trying to cater to that kid's needs would be my next journey in terms of how we can tweak a system to better fit the kid to try to get them from point A to point B. you
So
know
let's go back to what you're saying about aggressiveness, right?
Mhm.
So I was watching Allen Iverson versus Stephon Marbury on YouTube. I have a wonderful pastime between Netflix and YouTube for basketball now. It's great. But what I'm finding is that you're right. Like kids that are just naturally aggressive, when they make a mistake, they typically can fix it with hustle, right? And a lot of people have been like, yeah, Shorty got that dog in him, yo. They got that dog in him. That's all well and good, and that will take you to a certain level, right? But there are kids out here who are just shy, and they um, don't have that drive to want to just drive right down that player's throat, make that layup on him, score, get back on defense. And so when we talk about the nature of a child, some kids just aren't like that, right? And unless you can reinforce it, and I'm gonna say it's a cancer, right? Just for all sakes, right? God bless everybody we can. But when you take a kid and you're trying to mold them, you have to first build their confidence. And once they get confident and they understand their environment, a lot of times kids withhold because they're fearful of what they don't understand. They may not understand a speed, they may not understand a pattern that's presenting itself. There's lots of things they don't understand. So, what ends up happening is if you can build a kid's confidence, then you can start asking them to put the gas on a little bit and accelerate a little bit more, like you're saying, be a little more aggressive so they can take a risk. And so that fear, I think, can be nurtured out to a degree. But when they go back home, and if the home environment is suffocating where that kid, let's say, for example, can't express themselves to be aggressive, then all the work we've done on the court stand, right, Brad, all that stuff we're trying to bring out in that kid just gets reversed when, I'm just being silly here, daddy says shut up and go to your room, right? And it's like, that makes the kid freeze again. And so we're not bringing out, and as opposed to saying, whatever it might be, that's not shut up and go to your room, but it's something that's more inclusive that can bring that animal drive out in the kids some more, so the next day they're still experiencing that, so that it becomes like a part of who they are, and that becomes transformational. That's hard. Or when a coach takes to heart, like, we'll speak to myself, I don't ever want to speak negatively about any. So I was at St. John's, and Coach Gallagher, God bless his soul, he took my spirit. So I did not want to work as hard or whatever, but then I got it back when I got to Coach Vetter at Flint Hill. But had I stayed in that negative environment, it was reinforcing the habit stand that you're talking about we want to do away with. Does that make sense, everybody in the series? Am I making sense?
And we've talked about that before, Brandon, and I think, you're one of the lucky ones that got, an opportunity to play for a coach who could bring the best out of you. Um, this whole college transfer portal has trickled down to high school now. And now, we find ourselves trying to replace our kids in environments that we think they'll have a better opportunity to succeed. And for me, it's been very difficult, because as much as I've felt my son probably should be playing somewhere else, I also have to be a realist and say, hey, look, at his current size, he's not 6'8". I have to be realistic in terms of what's more important, that he gets his education, or are we chasing the dream of basketball? So that's another thing where, my son who wants to be a baller has no, could care less about what he's going to be doing as a 25 or 30-year-old, and I have to say, hey, look, we have to look at the big picture, being a student first. And he may not agree with it and, provide the resistance, but it's just another level of difficulty in terms of trying to navigate this journey of, doing the best for your kids and supporting them.
Well, let me jump on that for a second, and by all means, Murray, we're not saying Jordan wants to leave, so we're not
I didn't
even
even see much more.
we're not even talking about that, right? But here's the reality of it. I think it's important to note that every kid should be on the right frequency with a trainer or with a coach. And sometimes that frequency means that you may have to do something drastic and take a risk. And I believe that kids will respect the risk and the outcome better if they realize, hey, the grass may not be greener on the other side, but at least I tried, than to stay in like a situation where they're not on the right frequency. And so now they're stuck. And so it bottles their energy up, it bottles their confidence, their self-esteem, it stagnates them because they feel like they're suffocating. And so I believe that you're right. I got lucky that my family, my mother was supportive of me taking a risk, but the expectation was that I was not going to play wherever I went because I had self-esteem issues at this point. But what we wanted was a fresh environment for me so that if things did turn around and I was on the right frequency with the coach, that maybe I might have a happier high school experience. And so I would have sat on the bench at Flint Hill for every minute of every game, being playing on the number one team in the country. And I still would have been happy to be there because I was in an environment with kids that I knew were amazing basketball players. And I was like, hey, I'm amongst the stars. And I'm okay with that. Even though it didn't mean that I was going to play, my self-confidence and my self-esteem would rise because I felt like Coach Vetter was the type of coach that could bring the better out of me. So for all the families and parents that are out here, I'm saying, I don't know anybody's situation, but I'm saying that focus on, just like we're talking about identifying the right trainer that your son or daughter is going to be on this right frequency with, wherever you are. And so if it does mean that there's a sacrifice in the perceived academics at a new school, then we have to look at how we can support that child to still, like, and realistically speaking, Flint Hill was not the quality of school that St. John's was at the time. They just weren't on the same level, right? But they have books. There was ways to supplement to make sure that I was able to get the necessary curriculum that would challenge me to be the best academically that I could. And so I just don't, want us to not emphasize that because I think that's important for parents to hear. And obviously you hear from me all the time, buddy.
All the time. Can I propose a question to the trainers, Brandon, Brad?
Mhm.
As you know, one of the terms we use, currently is referring to a kid having a motor,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Can you teach that?
Part of me has to say yes,
Okay.
but there are kids out here that are just born with motors.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way they play. Like, they couldn't even think of any other way to possibly play. And then there's kids that you constantly have to prod along. Man, that's a good question. I think you can teach it just by showing them the way, it's going to be at the level that they're trying to play at,
Mm-hmm.
and then also in the future. So if I've got a top player on my team, say I got Coach Adams on my team, all right?
Yes,
He's a
Coach.
top player. He works hard. He's the hardest worker on the team. He's the most talented on the team. Well, a kid that has, doesn't have much of a motor is going to see that. And, at some point, it's either going to kick in or it's not. If you're around it, I feel like you can develop it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're around it all the time, I feel like you can develop it. So,
and just to kind of add to what you're saying, Brandon, you experienced recently a tryout with Durant or Takeover?
Durant.
mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things you pointed out was that the kids out there just seem to be moving at a different pace, right?
So
General, not
yeah,
necessarily skill set, but just
no, and the skills were amazing.
Yeah,
That
Hmm.
is,
they were evident.
it's yeah, they there was a lot of, you could tell that those kids had a lot of not coaching, but a lot of trial and error and observation, watching NBA games and all the rest of the stuff, right? So I have a an add-on to what Brad is saying.
Hmm.
I think there's a psychological component that goes into having a motor. One of those psychological components is that I'm going to run myself till I pass out, and I might not be able to breathe, and that's okay. And I'll figure it out. Either I'm gonna pass out and be on whatever, but I'm gonna go as hard as I possibly can until they tell me to stop. And if they tell me to stop, I might not stop immediately. So I think there's that part to it, that a kid has to be in shape physically to be able
Absolutely.
to achieve some of these things. Michael Jordan said that you must first get into the greatest physical condition that you can be, and then you can apply skills. And I don't disagree with that. You have got to be able to, in the fourth quarter, be there. And there was this big push right after my era, where it was like everybody was like, look, if I'm stronger than you and I can maintain my energy levels through the fourth quarter, then I'm going to beat you into the ground because I'm in better shape than you. So
Absolutely.
I think that there's a part to it as well. And then I think another part of it, Stan, has to come into goal setting. And when you get kids to buy into a goal that they've either set for themselves or you have collaborated with them, and then you start to walk backwards and say, are you achieving this goal with your level of effort based on what you know every coach is looking for? Then you have a chance to start chipping away at their lack of the motor, and they can start
Hmm.
to learn how to apply it. One of the things that we're doing in our program, and Stan, you may not know this, but Nysear, you do, is that we're building off of possessions. So I just want, and we have it's called a quadrant. And so there's a certain expectation when you have the ball. So there's offense, there's defense, and then there's with the ball, and then there's without the ball. So when you're doing it, there's like 10 things you have to display when you have the ball on offense. And so a part of those things would be the quality of the effort that you put out. And that's something that I think, if there's so much information about basketball, if you don't break it down so that there's fundamental layers that kids can grow up to in some sort of triangular format so they can see that they're better and better and better, I think it's complicated for kids to develop that motor because they don't know where they're running to or why they're doing it or all the rest of that stuff. And you may have to repeat that lesson over and over and over again 1,000 times so that they get it, because there's so many different things are happening with our kids as their little minds are maturing. So you may go through a period with a kid that is for 4 months not displaying a motor, and all of a sudden it turns on. So I don't think you give up on the kid. I don't think um, that you define a child. I think that you actually have to continue to nurture, because just like with and me and Nasir and Brad, that light will turn on eventually.
yeah. And I wanted to bring that question to light just because I mean I think we've all watched enough basketball to know, you know, you know the kids, like I said before, that get noticed first are those that are more aggressive. So if you're really, trying to get a kid to be that kid, I almost feel like we have to figure out how we can break through, you know, uh, psychologically to get that kid to run through a wall. to get that kid to just, play until he drops, you know what I mean? Because with all of the skill sets, and I'm sure we've all seen it, skill sets are great to have, but if you don't have the motor, sometimes you don't even get on the court to show your skill sets.
Yeah.
So,
That's true.
just backing into, trying to get that kid to that point where he can get an opportunity to get the exposure, would it suit him better to have him at tip top conditioning and doing everything full speed before we fine tune the skill sets, or do we do skill sets first and then see if we can develop a motor?
I think it's first of all, I think it's a combination. Um, but second of all, it's kind of like, back in the day, you mentioned Sidwell earlier. Um, there used to be these dances at Sidwell, right? Go-go's. And I couldn't dance. I was known as a wallflower. I don't want y'all laughing, but that's what I was. I used to hold up the wall for everybody, and it's no secret. But there were lots of kids out there that were on the dance floor, and they were moving and they were shaking and they were doing all the rest of the stuff, and they were having a great time. And they had a motor, and I'm like, how are they dancing like that? How are they moving and all the rest of the stuff? Sometimes you're insecure with who you are and your body and your space, and you don't want to overrun something and embarrass yourself, so you stay in control. And a lot of these kids have got to take the risk to be out of control so that they can start to manage their balance with this high speed. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that risk, that emotional side that can't come out or doesn't come out, I think has a lot to do with, each individual kid, the maturity level. I mean, do they have brothers? If you're the baby, you're probably going to have a bigger motor than the kid that's the oldest, just because you've had to survive and navigate your way differently. You don't get to be smooth when you're the youngest because you're fighting for the bigger crumbs, so I just think that there's a lot of psychology that goes into developing a motor that a lot of kids really struggle with. And I struggle with that with my kids. Where's your motor? How do you manage? I mean, one of my kids is really awkward and uncoordinated because he's, kind of tall for his age. And so he doesn't want to foul anybody, and so he's hesitant on how to move because he's still learning, what his body does.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
hey, let me jump in.
Yeah, please.
You guys mind if I jump in?
Yeah, please.
Hold on. We got another trainer that just joined us. Let me see if we can bring him on. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Akil, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, we can't see you, but you're on live. So everybody,
right.
This is Akil Charles. He's a mentee and a nephew of mine. He's a super trainer that's up and coming and killing the game. He has a company called ARC. And so if you don't know him now, you do. So Akil, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Akil's sister is actually one of my former students. I helped her navigate her way, Kyla Charles, through her high school and her college and her WNBA tour. So Akil is a great family friend as well. So anyway, Akil, you're on the show. We're going to be wrapping up shortly, but we want you to be able to jump in. We love your training style. We love your commitment to the sport. And you guys, I don't know if he can do it now because he's 30, but Akil was the fastest kid I had seen live. Allen Iverson. You should have seen this joker running down the floor. It was absolutely amazing. So anyway, so Stan, no, Brad, were you saying?
Brad, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Brad.
I was getting ready. I was going back to the motor thing. I think what's happening a lot of times, and that's just my communication, with players and all of that. I try to work him through that motor thing because, you have to have a certain motor to be successful at the different levels. You know, high school, that motor could be one thing. College, that motor could be a totally different thing, or it is a totally different thing. And, you know, professionally, you know, you're at a whole nother level. All right. So you got to basically, well, with a kid who needs to improve his motor, we're communicating to that kid that he needs to improve his motor. But that kid, believe it or not, already thinks he's working hard. You see what I'm saying? So that's why you have to show that kid, you know, beyond a reasonable doubt, exactly what working hard is. Because at that point, they don't know. They just don't know. What's that?
I said I live with one of those kids.
Oh yeah. We don't bash kids on this show, man.
That's right.
Yeah,
But
I got something to add. I
also,
got something to add to that.
Let me add one more thing about Stan. Stan, half of the comments that you said were said to me by Jaron Jackson Sr. And a lot of, you know, Jaron's dad. And a lot of people don't realize that they actually used to live in the DMV and they went to school locally. I believe he was at Sandy Spring Friends before, you know, they moved out there with his dad where he was coaching at and things like that. But half of the stuff that you said today as a parent, he said to me, you know, when back when Jaron was here and we were, you know, working out over at the Aspen Hill Club. So now all good points. I mean, I felt like it was spot on.
Thank you.
Akil, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just about to comment a little bit on that. Definitely agree with what he said. I feel like a big part of the game is you got to keep it real with your clients too, especially the older ones. A lot of times, trainers like beat around the bush and don't want to keep it real with the clients and the parents. But I feel like, especially if they have big D1 or NBA or whatever dreams, aspirations, you see that they're not putting in the work, or you don't think they can get there, you got to have a like real conversation with them. Don't put them down. Don't try to kill their dreams. But at the same time, as they get older, or the parent will respect you more, like for keeping it real with the kids through time.
Yeah.
Most parents just want the money.
That's a good point.
They're gonna keep just filling the kid's head up or the parents' head up, just to keep getting their money. At the same time, that's not how the game's supposed to go.
Yeah.
You know, we have 4 trainers, including Nysear, but you know, we all come from different interests individually. Like, you know, Brad, your perspective of the game, Akil, your perspective, my perspective, Nysear, your perspective, you know, and Stan, you've coached and worked kids out and stuff, and your perspective. You know, the hardest thing in the world to do when you're talking about being honest is to know that if you say the wrong thing, that parent might be out. Yeah. And so you try to straddle this fence. You know, one of the things that I used to do is I would never make a parent pay for multiple packages because I wanted them to feel like I did my job, they're coming back the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, so being honest, Akil, is 100% right. But as trainers, we have to be leaders too. And we have to make sure that we are empowering to these kids so that they feel like, yeah, I might not be, you know, like, let's take a look. Are college players really D1? Are they 5'6"? Not really. Like, that's the exception, not the rule. So we need to help the kids figure out where they can be most successful.
Yeah.
You might be most successful at an NAIA school, you know, and you might be in the Hall of Fame. Shoot, that's what's up. You know, I wasn't in the Hall of Fame at Miami, but guess what? It's okay. But find your level and then really kill the game and enjoy, because those are the memories that we're going to take with us. And so being honest with the families, I think you're spot on. And it's just about how you empower them so that they know that your heart is in the right place.
Yeah. I feel sorry for some of you trainers, man. Y'all got it rough, because when you do this for a living, you don't want to kill your clientele by being too honest. So I understand, you have to do your job in terms of, if any parent comes and say, hey, I need you to train my kid. Yeah, you're going to train them. You're going to say, hey, look, this kid doesn't stand a chance. I'm not going to train him. But at the same time, I'm sure you've all experienced kids that may come to you who are going to a DeMatha, going to a Gonzaga, going to a St. John's, and they weren't recruited to go there. All right. And they have all these aspirations of being a star player at these schools and all. And I'm sure you guys know, like, I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's unlikely if they weren't looking for you. You know what I mean? This is probably not the right school if you are truly looking to be, a varsity player,
Yep.
and there's some hard conversations, that probably should be had, but I think a lot of times parents don't know this either,
I think that they don't want to deal with the reality. Like, if you really expect your kid to go to St. John's and they didn't recruit them, and you're just going to show up and your kid on the middle school team wasn't the best player on that middle school, you're kind of unrealistic. And you can try to spin whatever story you want about it, but at the end of the day, it's going to be extremely aggravating. And so, that's the time where hopefully these trainers are helping parents to make good decisions about where they send their kids in the first place. That's a skill as a trainer that you need to have, is to know the area schools, maybe understand, what kids go to what type of schools and all the rest of the stuff. So these parents don't end up saying, like, I had no idea. Yeah, you knew, because we talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. And you need your degree in psychology.
So yes, you do. Like Nysear, isn't that what I used to say? Like, I don't have a degree to work with this kid.
Good.
Like,
You got to be a therapist.
I didn't get that degree. I don't even think for some of these kids being a therapist is it. I really think that for some of these kids out here, they really are delusional. And so I have had to work on being extremely patient.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I hold kids in the highest possibility of success. And I think that's how you do it, so that the kid recognizes that this relationship is bigger than basketball. I was telling somebody that I hug kids after every practice because I need them to know that I care about them regardless of how they did on the court. And it's bigger for me than this, right? Let's be, the president of a corporation. Let's, become an investment banker. Let's be a doctor. Let's be a lawyer. But let's use this curriculum concept of being the best version of ourselves and becoming subject matter expert. Let's practice here so that when you go into some other field, you already have been working with these tools for success and executive function. So, guys, listen, we are 20 minutes over time. And I just say thank you, because I feel like we could do this much more, and we will. Next week, 9:00, we are back on it. And, really just talking about, the kids and the development out here. And we'll have other coaches on and that kind of stuff. Stan, hopefully you'll come back and spend more time with us, and
sure.
We'll share Jordan's perspective.
Yeah. Great to meet you, Brad. Good to see you, Nysear. I've met you before. You may not remember.
You met me before, or Nysear?
I remember you. Yeah, for sure. I met
Really?
you. I forgot where though.
But there's a screw up.
Okay, yeah.
So,
well, I've been around and I'm old.
hey,
So.
Akil, are you good for next week? You gonna be
Yes, sir.
9:00?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll be there on time. Yep.
Guys, listen, thank you so much. You know, really the end goal for all of this is to create a community where parents can express themselves, where we can talk about kids and how they're developing and what's missing and all the rest of the stuff. And really it's just our perspective, right? Because one man's treasure might be another person or another coach's trash, right? So we're not here to trash any kids. We're here to lift these kids up as the treasure that they are. And if there's things that they could be doing differently, we would just offer our opinion about where we see improvement and growth, you know, and that's how I want us to lead. So anyway, with that being said, Nysear, any final thoughts?
No. Have a good night.
Good night. Brad, any final thoughts?
Nah, that's it. Everybody have a good night.
All right. Phil, you good?
Yes, sir.
All right. Stan, thank you.
Yeah, just want to say thank you guys for doing what you do, man. The kids need you.
No problem.
Appreciate it. No problem, man.
All right. All right.